The kitchen trash bag was a sagging anchor of household waste and discarded convenience. But as I dragged it toward the mudroom, a sharp, rectangular weight shifted against my thigh. I stopped. There was a jarring finality to the sound it made, a plastic-on-plastic click that resonated through the quiet room. I reached inside, my fingers brushing past coffee grounds and junk mail until they closed around a cold, smooth casing. I pulled it out. A pregnancy test. 2 pink lines. They weren't faint or ambiguous. They were vivid, neon streaks of betrayal, a mocking confirmation of a life I no longer recognized. From down the hallway, the rhythmic spray of the shower acted as a white noise veil. Above the hiss of the water, I could hear Brenda humming. It was a light, airy melody, a song from a romantic comedy or a summer memory I couldn't quite place. To my ears, it felt like a serrated blade across my gut. We hadn't shared a bed in 6 months. We hadn't shared a meaningful look in a year. Our marriage had withered into a hollow, transactional arrangement, a legacy system running on fumes and politeness. I stood paralyzed in the kitchen, the heavy trash bag in my left hand and that damning piece of plastic in my right. My mind, usually a fortress of logic and syntax, went blank before it began to race at 1,000,000 cycles per second. If we were 6 months dormant, but the test was a fresh positive, the math was more than just wrong. It was catastrophic. The water cut off. The sudden, absolute silence of the house was deafening, pressing against my eardrums like deep-sea pressure. I had exactly 3 minutes before she emerged. 3 minutes to reconcile the man I had been for 38 years with the man I was forced to become in this moment. The old Ethan, the impulsive, heart-on-his-sleeve version of me, would have kicked the bathroom door off its hinges. He would have shouted until his lungs burned, fueled by the kind of destructive rage that burns bridges but leaves the arsonist standing in the ashes with nothing but regret. But I had spent the last 8 months in a quiet, dark school of my own making. I had learned that patience is not just a virtue. It is a weapon of precision. I had learned that a true dismantling of a lie requires you to swallow your pride, layer by layer, until you could dismember the deception from the inside out. I tucked the test back into the depths of the bag, tied the yellow drawstrings into a tight, surgical knot, and carried it out to the garage. By the time Brenda stepped out of the bathroom, wrapped in a plush white robe with her damp hair turbaned in a towel, I was already leaning against the granite island, a half-empty glass of water in my hand, perfectly composed. "Hey, babe, how was your shower?" I asked. My voice was steady, conversational, hitting the exact frequency of a bored husband. She froze for a microsecond, a flicker of something, defensiveness, or perhaps a primal instinct of being hunted, crossing her eyes before she masked it with a smile. "It was good," she said, pulling the lapels of her robe tighter. "You okay? You look a bit strange, distant. Just a long day at the office," I lied, offering a tight, practiced smile that didn't reach my eyes. "The new build is full of bugs. I am exhausted." She leaned in, pressing a fleeting, cold kiss to my cheek. It was the first physical contact we'd had in weeks, and it felt like a ghost passing through me. "Get some rest," she whispered before heading toward the bedroom. As the sound of her footsteps faded into the carpet, I felt for the phone in my pocket. I didn't call a lawyer. Not yet. Instead, I reached out to a contact she never knew existed, a quiet, expensive professional who had been helping me assemble the wreckage of my life for this exact moment. If you're wondering how this ends, or why the wife of my wife's lover called me sobbing 3 days later, begging for mercy, stick around. Because that test in the trash wasn't just a medical result. It was the final, jagged piece of a puzzle I'd been constructing for 8 grueling months. And when the picture finally snapped into focus, it didn't just dismantle my marriage. It triggered a chain reaction that took 3 other lives down with it. My name is Ethan Miller. I'm a software engineer in Denver. For a decade, I've built systems designed for stability and redundancy. I know how to find patterns in white noise. I know how to track data points that others ignore. For 9 of those years, I believe my life was a secure, well-architected program. Brenda and I were the quintessential South Denver success story. We had the 3-bedroom craftsman, a backyard shaded by a massive live oak, and a quiet, predictable rhythm. But in reality, we were just two tenants sharing a mortgage and a history we had long stopped updating. The crack started 2 years ago. It wasn't a landslide, it was a slow, agonizing erosion. She became a ghost in the room, her attention perpetually anchored to the glowing screen of her phone. As a marketing executive for a major fitness brand, her career supposedly demanded late hours and team-building retreats. I was the trusting husband, the fool who believed that the sanctity of our vows was an unhackable firewall. Then came March, the month the bedroom died. When I reached for her in the dark, she retreated as if my skin were caustic. "I'm just tired, Ethan," she'd murmur in her pillow, her back a stone wall between us. After the third rejection, I stopped reaching. In that silence, I began to observe. The true fracture occurred in July. I came home early, a rare occurrence when my code finished ahead of schedule, only to find her voice drifting from our bedroom. It was a laugh, a genuine, melodic sound I hadn't heard directed at me in years. "I know," she was saying, her tone low and intimate. "I miss you too. He's at work. He won't be back for hours." My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. I didn't burst in. I stayed in the hallway, a shadow in my own home, listening as she poured her heart into a phone, telling a man she loved him. I walked back out to my car, drove until the amber street lights of Denver blurred into a single streak of light, and realized I was no longer a husband. I was an investigator. I didn't need an agency. I had the tools. I checked the digital footprint. I found the numbers. I found Tyler Hayes, a personal trainer at her company, a man with a perfect marriage and 2 young kids. I saw his Instagram photos, his beach vacations, his smiling wife, Megan. I wondered if Megan had any idea about the rot spreading beneath her floorboards. I placed a tracker on Brenda's SUV. I set logic-based alerts on our joint accounts. I cataloged every conference that was actually a tryst at a boutique hotel, every late meeting that ended at a luxury apartment complex in North Denver. I watched from the shadows, recording timestamps, hotel receipts, and the metadata of a life lived in secret. By the time I stood in that kitchen with the pregnancy test, I had a digital ledger that would hold up in any courtroom in the country. After I sent the final data dump to Megan, we met in a quiet, nondescript cafe in Golden. She was shattered, but there was a relief in her eyes, the relief of finally having a name for the darkness she'd been sensing. We traded information like two generals planning a coup. It turned out Tyler and Brenda weren't just having an affair. They were planning to siphon assets and disappear. The final confrontation happened on a Saturday morning. No screaming, no broken glass. I laid out the evidence on the dining table with the cold precision of a developer debugging a corrupted system. "How far along are you, Brenda?" I asked. She looked at the high-resolution photos of her and Tyler on my laptop, her skin turning the color of ash. "Ethan, please," she begged, her voice trembling. "It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. We haven't touched each other in over half a year. This isn't a miracle, Brenda. It's a consequence." When I slid the divorce papers across the table, I wasn't asking for an explanation. I was delivering a verdict. The aftermath was a hurricane. Tyler was fired for violating corporate ethics. Brenda was ousted from her high-profile position when the team-building expenses were audited. Their secret world didn't just crumble, it imploded. And when the dust finally settled, I discovered the web went even deeper. A third and fourth man, a history of deceit that would have broken a lesser man. People ask if I regret the coldness of it all. They ask why I didn't vent my rage. I tell them that screaming only hurts your own throat. I wanted to walk away with my dignity, my assets, and my future intact. Today, I'm seeing someone new, Sarah. She's honest, she's kind, and we move at the speed of trust. I still think about that evening in the kitchen, holding a bag of trash and a broken life. I think about the man who chose not to lose his mind, but to find his way out. I didn't just survive the fallout. I use it to clear the debris and build something better. If you're standing in your own kitchen right now, holding a secret that feels like it's going to end you, remember this. The best revenge isn't the explosion. It's the silence that follows when you finally decide you're worth more than their lies. If you've ever chosen your own dignity over a broken relationship, comment, "I chose me," and hit subscribe, because real strength isn't about how loud you yell. It's about how quietly you rebuild.